All right, guys, today's lesson is over measures of central tendency, and the measures of central tendency are the mean, median, and mode, and sometimes range is thrown in there as well. We'll talk about that. Now, you guys have done measures of central tendency before. You've talked about mean, median, and mode in your earlier grade levels. Today, specifically, we're going to focus on outliers and how outliers can affect the mean or the median of a data set. And so we'll talk about what outliers are here in just a moment. So before we start, this is just a review. To find the mean, which is also called the average, we're going to divide the sum of the values by the number of values. So we're going to add them all up. That's what sum means, of course, is we add them up, and then we're going to divide by the number of values. So if there's 8 values, we divide by 8. If there's 12 values, we divide by 12. For the median, the first thing we have to do is line them up from least to greatest. That's really important. And then once we do that, we're going to find the middle number. If you have an odd number of values, then there will be one number in the middle. You'll have no problem. If there's an even number of values, then you'll have two numbers in the middle, and that's when we'll have to find the average or the mean of those middle two numbers. I like to think of the median as being the middle number because it's usually the numbers that are in the middle there. The mode is the number that occurs the most often. Usually there's one mode. Sometimes there's more than one mode, and sometimes none of the numbers repeat. And if none of the numbers repeat, then there would be no mode at all. So you can have more than one. You can have no mode, or you can just have one. And then the range, to find the range, we're going to take the difference, which means we're going to subtract the largest number and the smallest number. It's the easiest one to find, especially when you've already got them arranged from least to greatest. All right, so in this first example, we have a set of numbers up here, 10, 6, 8, 8, 5, 11, 9, 12, 8, 6, 8, 9, 8, 10, and 7. The first thing we're going to do is rewrite them in order. We have to rewrite them in order to find the median, but it makes everything easier to do. I think it makes the mean easier to find, it makes the mode definitely easier to find, and definitely the range as well. So once we write them in order, which is a little time consuming, we have 5, 6, 6, 7, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, so there's actually quite a few 8s there, 9, 9, 10, 10, 11, and 12. So we're going to take the sum of those numbers. We're going to add them all up. Now, when I do that, I like to write down what that sum is. That way, if I make a mistake, I don't have to start all the way over. If I forget a number, for example, I can just add it on to whatever my sum was. And when you add them all up, we're going to get 125. And then to find the mean, we have to divide 125 by however many numbers there are. And if you count, there's 15 values. So 125 divided by 15 gives us a mean of 8.3. The median is the number in the middle. Now, because we have 15 numbers, that's an odd number of values, and there will be one number, and that number is 8. And you can see we have 7 values on the left of 8, and we have 7 values on the right, so 8 is smack dab in the middle. Then there's the mode, and obviously we have several different 8s. We actually have 5 different 8s. So 8 is the mode. It's the number that occurs the most often. Now, there are some numbers that repeat. You can see there's also 2 9s and 2 10s, 2 6s, but it's the number that repeats the most. So if there's a tie for that number, you can write them both down. But 8 is clearly repeated the most number of times here. And then the range is the largest number minus the smallest number, and that range is 7. The range actually tells us how spread out the values are. And 7 is not a very big range, which means these numbers are relatively close to each other. Now, you're going to be asked in your homework what the most representative measure is, and this is where we have to think about outliers. An outlier is a number that's way different from the rest of the numbers. It's either really, really big or really, really small. And when I say really, really big, I mean much bigger than the rest of the numbers or much smaller than the rest of the numbers. A noticeable difference. And in this data set, we don't really have that. We don't have any outliers because there isn't a number that's just off, right? And to be an outlier means you're just different from the rest, and we don't have that. So because there's no outliers, we're going to say the mean is the most representative measure because it's going to give us that value that's smack dab in the middle, 8.3. In example 2, we're going to do the same thing with the numbers. I'll save you the time and just say we've written these numbers in order from least to greatest. You can see that order is right here. If you count them up, we have 14 numbers. We have 14 of them. So we're going to add them all up. And that's easier to do, I think, when you write them from least to greatest first, because then you're going in order, right, when you add them all up. And when you add them all up, you're going to get 441. And we're going to divide that by the 14 numbers and get 31.5 or 31.5. And that's when you round it to the nearest tenth. I don't think it was exactly 31.5, but we're going to round to the nearest tenth. The median, because there's an even number of values, 14 of them, is actually going to be two numbers in the middle. You can see there's 6 numbers to the left and 6 numbers to the right, and there's 2 numbers in the middle. So when you have 2 numbers in the middle like that, we're going to average the middle 2 numbers, or take the mean of the middle 2 numbers. And so if you add 29 and 30 up, you'll get 59, and then we divide by 2 because we're averaging 2 numbers, and that's going to give us 29.5, which you probably could have figured out is right smack dab in the middle of 29 and 30, is 29.5. The mode is the number that occurs the most, and we only have 2 repeating numbers. They're both 23. And then the range is the largest number, 45, minus the smallest number, 6, and that's 39. And that's a much bigger range than our last problem, and that tells you these numbers are more spread out. You can see 6 is pretty small compared to 45. Now, when it says the most representative measure, this time our answer is going to be the median. And the reason for that is because we have an outlier. And what an outlier will do, and you can see the outlier is the 6 right here. It's just a lot different from the rest of the numbers. The outlier is going to throw off the mean. Usually it makes it much larger, or I shouldn't say much. It makes it a little bit larger, a little bit smaller than what it should be. And you can see there's a pretty noticeable difference here between the median and the mean. They should be close to the same. Like in the last problem, it was 8 and 8.3. And they're 2 units off, and that's because of the outlier there. And so anytime we have an outlier, and this is important, anytime we have an outlier, we use the median. If we don't have an outlier, we'll use the mean. So I'll say that again. Anytime we have an outlier, we use the median. If we do not have an outlier, we use the mean or the average. All right, example 3, we have, again, another set of numbers here, and when you count them, it looks like there's 13 different values there. And so the first thing we're going to do is rewrite them in order. And then, again, that's going to help us with the mean, the median, the mode, and the range. It's very useful. So we're going to rewrite them in order, and then we're going to add them up. And when you add all these 13 numbers up, we get 704 divided by 13 numbers is 54.2. The median, because there's an odd number of values, you can see there's 13 of them, will be one number that's in the middle. We don't have to take the average or the mean of the middle 2 because it's an odd number of values. There's 13 of them, so there will be 6 numbers on this side and 6 numbers on that side, and it's smack dab in the middle. So the median is 50. The mode, there is no repeating numbers here, so we don't have a mode, so none. And then the range is 99 minus 34, which is a very large range of 65. And that is, again, a good indicator that there might be an outlier, and there is. The outlier is 99, and you can see that the outlier is dragging the mean up. You can see 50 is the middle number, and the mean is 4.2 units farther away. And so because we have an outlier, we are going to use the median, just like I mentioned in the last slide. Anytime we have an outlier, we use the median as our best measure. And that's because the mean's just too far or too big. It's been dragged up by that outlier, and we don't want that outlier to throw off our data. All right, last example. Again, it's got some more values. These numbers are all very close together. You can see they're all in the 20s, so no outlier here. We're going to rewrite them in order from least to greatest. And then once we do that, we can add them up to get 280 divided by, let's see, there's 12 numbers here. You can count and double check, but there's 12. And that's going to give us a mean of 23.3. The median is going to be the middle 2 numbers because since we have 12 numbers, and that's even, there will be 2 numbers in the middle. 5 numbers to the left, 5 numbers to the right, 2 numbers in the middle. Now it's actually the same number, so you could add them up to get 46 and divide by 2, but that will just give you 23, and that's because the numbers are the same. So 23 is going to be the median, even though there's 2 23s in the middle there. So 23 is the median. And look how close these numbers are, 23, 23.3. That's a good sign that there's no outlier, and there definitely is not an outlier in this problem. So we want those the median and the mean to be close together. The mode, there are 3 22s and there are 3 23s, so there's a tie for first place, so they both get written down as modes. And then the range is the biggest number, 26, minus the smallest number, 21, which is 5. And the most representative measure, we don't have an outlier, so we're going to stick with the mean. Again, if you have an outlier, I'll write this down so you guys can get this. If we have an outlier, oops, maybe not write it down. There we go. If you have an outlier, we're going to use the median. Oops, can't spell. Median. And if we have no outlier, we're going to use the mean, which is what we want to use, and we hope that there's no outliers. But you just have to check that there is no outliers in these problems.